Hey Gearheads, and welcome to GT Garage Talk, a discussion about all things automotive. I am your host Corey, and on this week's episode, I hate to say that I'm falling into a rut. I really am not. I am continuing interviewing some fun peers from throughout the automotive industry, and this week is no exception to that. We do pick up similar themes from last week's episode, hashtag save the minivans, but I won't give too much away. This week, I do have the pleasure of speaking with Nicole Wakelin. She is very busy in the automotive industry. She's a freelance writer. She is a podcaster. She is just all around fun to talk to, and I don't want to take away from her episode or spoil too much. So without further ado, we will welcome on Nicole. Well, I am pleased to have Nicole Wakelin on with me this week. Nicole, how is it going?
Good. I'm sitting here at home waiting for a gigantic thunderstorm to roll in. So,
we could use more of those down here in East Texas. It is just, we are cooking down here.
Yeah, Texas, you guys get some serious heat. It's crazy compared to what we get, but I'll welcome the thunderstorm any minute now anyway.
So no worries if we hear crazy noise going on in the background over there.
Exactly. If it sounds like the world is coming to an end, it's just a thunderstorm.
Good to know. And I will just receive it by osmosis through the internet down here because Lord knows my grass needs it. So
maybe some of it'll come your way because I'm talking to you now. Some will make it down to Texas.
It would be so nice. So first, I want to thank you for making time to come on. You are incredibly busy yourself. You dabble in so much that I will fling it over to you and allow you to let our listeners know exactly everything you are involved in.
Okay, let's see. So I do a couple of my own podcasts. I do the Wheel Bearings podcast, and I do one called Fast Women for Newsweek. I freelance for a bunch of different outlets, for Kelley Blue Book, for IC Cars, for True Car, for Auto Trader. I'm going to forget half a dozen places in there, but I do a lot of freelancing. And I'm also a juror for World Car of the Year and North American Car and Truck of the Year and Women's World Car. So I have a bunch of stuff going on.
Yes, you do. And just looking over your LinkedIn and seeing everything that you're plugged into, I was like, this is more than I knew. So very, very impressive. I did see when you launched the Fast Women podcast, and I was super excited about that because we need more female reviewers and conversation out in the world. I've recently brought my wife in. She's come on a couple of podcasts, but we do weekly car reviews here on our YouTube channel too. So it's just awesome to see that flourish in today's world.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of automotive content out there, and I think having new voices is always a good thing. So.
Absolutely. More voices is better for everyone because you can
Right.
find someone. My passions are completely different from your passions, which are completely different from Joe Rady's passions, which are completely different from you name whomever it may be. And so each channel, each person, each reviewer brings their own unique perspective. And it is just awesome to hear how different vehicles hit different needs for different people.
Right. Yeah. I think it's good. And I love that we can all sit down and drive the same car and have completely different things to say about it. So it's good to listen to lots of sources and read lots of stuff because everyone's opinion is so very different. We all fixate on different things when we get in a car.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that kind of brings me to how did you really get involved into so many different things in the automotive industry? Where did it all blossom for you?
I've probably been doing this for a little over 10 years now, and it started out when way back when social media was kind of a newish kind of thing, and the whole concept of influencers was kind of new. And I was not even covering automotive; I was actually covering pop culture. A big nerd on the side. I like Star Wars and Star Trek and superheroes and all that kind of really nerdy stuff, and have since I was a kid. And I was covering that for a site that was a part of Wired at the time. It was called Geek
Wow.
Mom. I believe they're still out there. And they Chrysler invited, because it was Chrysler at the time.
Right.
They've changed names twice.
Oh, bless their
But
hearts.
they invited some folks down for an influencer wave. I think they technically called it a social media wave at the time, for the Dodge Dart.
Oh my.
And yeah, and I was at a site that was all nerd people, and they're like, we don't care about cars. And I thought, well, I do. I don't even know how this works, but I will go. And so I did. Thought it was amazing. Found my thing that I was into, and from there just kept plugging away at the auto stuff, and that's how it led to all this freelancing and all these opportunities. But it's a lot of it makes it sound like I was just like lightly knocking on doors. I was pounding on doors and kicking them open. So that's how I got here.
You got to do what you got to do. So that is an awesome story. And everybody's journey is unique in what the first open door is. So that's very interesting. Pop culture.
Yeah.
So were you just doing writing back then, or was there any podcast or video work involved?
I was doing writing. I wrote for a couple different, like, very nerdy websites, some of which are here, some of which are gone. And I did the Geek Girls, not Geek, was it Geek Girls? I did a podcast for something called the Geek Girls Network once upon a time. And I did do a podcast for Geek Mom, which was the site that Chrysler invited someone down for. And then I attended instead of doing auto shows, which is our thing now, I did fan conventions, like San Diego Comic-Con is just finished up this weekend. And I went to SDCC a couple of times, and I went to New York Comic-Con a couple of times and covered things there. I hosted a couple of panels. And so that was sort of what I was doing, but it was all writing, and everything was writing, podcasting, appearances related to pop culture stuff. That was my jam back then.
Yeah. So you really have been in the podcast world for a considerable amount of time in the grand scheme of how long podcasts have really caught fire.
Yeah. And actually, it was even before that. I have to shout out to my husband, who has had a podcast for, I think, 15 plus years at this point. It's called the D6 Generation, and it is literally about board games and miniature gaming and Dungeons and Dragons and all the nerdiest of nerd games that you could possibly find, because that's something he's been into since he was a kid. He was recording that podcast, him and a couple of his buddies. It's still around. And I had a little segment on that podcast called Total Fangirl, because all me fangirling out about stuff. So that was really early on. Podcasts were really, really, really new. So either being a co-host or a host or sort of like a segment appearance, I've been doing podcasts for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And everything I get into. So I started GT Garage Talk as a podcast just because, for lack of better term, the barrier to entry seemed the lowest, versus video. Video is a whole new animal, because not only is audio important, but you're adding visuals to it. And so even though I saw it as the low barrier to entry, everything I did and researched was talking about how we are really just now getting into that exponential growth of popularity of podcasts. So it has been a fun journey for us. We here are in season 3, and it has been a wild ride here as well.
It's good that you enjoy it. It's fun. Podcasting keeps changing. It keeps morphing. There's more opportunities to make it financially lucrative than there were, 10 or 15 years ago. And there's more of an audience. Once upon a time you said podcast and most people looked at you a little weird, like, what? What's a podcast? I don't get it. And you'd have to try to explain the concept, not of your podcast, but of podcasting in general. So now that doesn't happen. Now most people know what a podcast is. You go and there's whole podcast networks for various genres and things that people listen to, and that, didn't exist. Having those makes it even more accessible for people and gives new entrants more of a voice, because it's easy to, get involved in these networks and make connections, and it's kind of fun. And it's a neat group of people. I've always found people who podcast to be a fun group of people, pretty outgoing, pretty chatty bunch, or you wouldn't be podcasting,
exactly, right? And yes, so it has absolutely been a fun ride. And really the passion of this podcast now is, our tagline is a discussion of all things automotive. In reality, automotive is like the thread that ties all the people together, because this really has become a conversation about the people that make automotive what it is, whether it be engineers, designers, analysts, or freelance writers, YouTubers, whatever the case may be. Just finding that common thread of automotive, and then the people who shape and form the industry, like yourself, and just help give a voice, a life to the vehicles that we drive every day.
Yeah, it is an interesting mix of people. I think if you don't work in the automotive industry, you sort of have this idea that everyone's sort of the same, and the sort of cookie cutter image, and everyone's just like this massive gearhead that just can rip apart a car and put it back together again, and that's all they're interested in. And that's one type of person, but
and that's not even me.
That's yeah. See, there's all these different, in between. There's someone who is really about the tech in the cars. With the advent of EVs becoming so much more a part of the conversation, you have a whole different aspect of people who are really into the battery technology and where that's going to evolve to, and people who are just, okay, maybe I'm a performance person, maybe I'm a handling person, maybe I just like cars that are great for families, and I want to share how my family uses a car versus how, your family might be able to use this, whether it's really user friendly for 5 kids or not, and somebody else who's just, no, I'm going to tell you how fun this thing is to drive. They're all very valid points of view. Everybody sort of has their different little way of looking at it. And I think it gives everybody a different perspective. I think it's nice.
So where do you feel you fall in on that entire spectrum? Like, again, you got in through pop culture and this happenstance, or made a connection through Chrysler. And so where do your passions lie within the industry?
And for me, and it's changed a little bit because my kids, I have 2 daughters who are both college age now. But when I started doing this, they were little kids. So they were the kids you were trying to struggle into a car seat, and them and their friends, and throw them into the car, and all the random stuff that comes along. So the focus was more for me, like, I think I had wanted to make sure that parents knew, like, okay, I know this looks like a really cool, sexy thing, but there are some things about this car you're going to hate, or there's some things about this car you're going to love. So I think I always come at it from a point of view based on that being sort of how I started, is that I want to make sure that a person gets a car that works for their lifestyle. If you're a busy family, if you're just a guy looking for a cheap commuter car, if you're a young college student, if you live where it snows 20 feet of snow every year, trying to find a car that just works for you. So not one thing about the car, but like when I review a car, I look at it and think, okay, so it's probably not a mom with 3 kids that's buying a Toyota Supra. She might be, but that's going to be her fun car. That's not what she doesn't care how her kids are going to deal with it, because they're not going to be in it. Review it for someone who's going to actually drive this car, the person who might want this thing, and tell them what they need to know about the kind of person this car targets. I feel like that's how I try to come at it.
It's so funny that you bring up the Supra, because we literally just had one a couple of weeks ago. And so I do a solo review where I'm like geeking out over the performance numbers and all of that. And then later in the week, we do a family review. We've got a 4-year-old son, and he typically rides in the back seat. Obviously, he did not do that for the Supra, but my wife completely claimed that car. And she wanted to keep that one. And she was like, well, this would be my car, so no need to, put a car seat in it or anything like that. Like, this is my car. So it's very funny that you bring up the Supra and families in general, because that was a literal conversation here at the channel. Funny enough, there is a rear child seat anchor on the rear bulkhead behind the seats, but the seat design does not lend for that tether to go up and over. And there are no lower tethers in it, because we do install car seats in every vehicle we test. And I put that in our family reviews. I couldn't do that on that one. I mean, the owner's manual does recommend, the seatbelt method and all that, but yeah, I wasn't going to go through the trouble on that car.
Yeah,
it was.
I just wrote a story for Kelley Blue Book that I don't even think they've published it. I think it's somewhere, in the editor's hands kind of thing, and had to talk about how well things latch into cars, like how fitting 3 car seats in if you ever tried to fit 3 car seats in 1 row, not like in a second row and a third, but all of them in 1
Mhm.
row, and it's like you almost have to, like, put the middle seat in, and it's like wedge the side seats in and just hope that you can shift everything left and right, and some of the cars, it's easier to fit in and others it's not, and sometimes those latches are, like, buried in the seat, and
Mhm.
you can't get to them, and it's just a struggle, so I had to write about so literally it was in my mind how easy or not easy it is. Sometimes cars that look like they should be like fantastic for having your family when it becomes the practical of trying to do things like just plug in a car seat
Mhm.
can be something that will make you want to scream as a parent because you're never just doing that like with all this time,
Right.
right?
It's
You're
always
struggling, you've got one kid in your arms, another kid's running around in the driveway, then it's raining, and then the dog is at like there's 18 things happening at once. So it's never easy.
and it has given me a new respect for the popularity of SUVs because, like, I'm a car guy. I like cars. The
Yeah.
center of gravity is lower. They're more fun to drive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But having to move a car seat from vehicle to vehicle as we get new press vehicles in and out, like my daily driver is a Chevy Cruze, and the car seat
Mhm.
goes in the middle because my arms do not physically bend in the necessary ways to put that rear anchor in on my Chevy Cruze. It is not possible. I don't bend that
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
so there are vehicles. We'll take the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Never in a million
Okay.
years did I think I would be installing a car seat in the back of an S-Class. But as far as sedans go, because those back doors are enormous and there is tons of legroom because it is essentially a chauffeur vehicle, like I was able to get in there, move all around. I was like, as far as sedans go, A plus. But
Yeah.
when it comes to SUVs, they're just so much easier. You either slide that seat forward, tip it forward, whatever the case may be, and that rear latch just goes on in a breeze. And then tightening it up, you've got all this room. Ugh.
Right. It's so much easier. What about a minivan? Would you take an SUV first or a minivan first? Doesn't
Honestly,
matter which one, just generic
right.
minivan or SUV.
I am literally in conversation with my older brother right now who has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They are thinking SUV, and I'm like, don't do it. don't. Like, he and I grew up in a 1992 I'll get it right. A Plymouth Grand Voyager. There we go. And so, like, we had in the back of our minds the stigma as we got older of, well, minivans aren't cool. But we have tested Mini here on the channel, and like, it's my go-to. We had the Chrysler Pacifica, and when I was comparing the numbers for our YouTube video, 10 cubic feet more storage space in that than the 2021 2022 Chevy Tahoe, which just grew to
Mhm.
be even bigger. And Tucker loved getting in and out of it. He loved the power sliding doors. Like, children, my kids' age, my nephew's age, minivans are cool to them. They're practical
Yeah.
for families. They are so easy to maneuver around. Like, minivans are the way to go.
Well, and you know what else makes them really easy? So, like, when you have kids, if you're bringing grandma, my mom's knees have been bad, I think,
Mhm.
for like forever. Getting in and out of a minivan is really easy for her. An SUV is a little too high. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like I need to get like one of those little step stools you keep like behind the kitchen
Absolutely.
cabinet to reach the top shelf. I need one of those shoved in the back of the car so that she can get in. But in a minivan, it's not quite such a
Mhm.
step up. So, if you've got older folks or you've got little kids, they have it all covered. So, yeah, I like minivans for that too.
Yeah, that was exactly our experience. So we actually rented the Pacifica to road trip it from East Texas to LA for a wedding and my son's 4th birthday, which we celebrated at Cars Land in Disney
Nice.
California Adventure. And whole video on our road trip to and from California. But my mother-in-law came with us, and she has had knee surgery, and the minivan was perfect for that. And then
Mhm.
the ginormous windows, we of course made the stop by the Grand Canyon, so just being able to see and take in all the views. We did a Route 66 trip on the way home, so saw, classic Americana, just the perfect vehicle for what we needed, and folded that third row flat into the floor, had it loaded with gear. yeah,
Mhm.
minivans are absolutely the way
Yeah.
to go.
And I know there's that stigma, but I also want to think to myself, I'm like, okay, but like you have kids, you have enough kids that you're thinking about getting a minivan. Your days of being super cool girl or super cool guy are in like they're behind you. You got kids in a diaper bag, people. Like
Right.
the coolness, like get used to a new level of cool and it involves a minivan. Just go for it.
I think Toyota even leaned into it. It was probably a decade ago with their whole Swagger Wagon
Yes.
promotion.
I just played that. There's a video somewhere of, and I'm going to forget, like you said, it's been a while,
Mm.
where they had a woman who was like a professional driver and they put two kids in the back and like she goes to, the shtick is that she goes to pick them up at school
Mm.
and they put on their racing helmets and she's like racing through the streets and doing donuts and all this and in a minivan. And I remember seeing the behind the scenes because people were really concerned, like, you put two young children in the back of a car and you were driving aggressively. And like, no, actually we weren't. And they show like how in the real to get those shots, the kids really are in the back of the minivan.
Mhm.
They really do have helmets, but it's not even on. They're just like spinning it really tightly, like by hand on this little roller thing to get the kids to look
Yep.
like they're leaning from side to side at 10 miles an hour, not even
Right.
that. So they did all this stuff, but the idea was like, this is so cool. She's racing down the street in her minivan.
It's so funny that minivans have come back up so naturally in this conversation because last week's episode, I was talking with Jimmy Dinsmore and ended up titling that episode #Save the Minivans. So here we are yet again. Just a common recurring theme. It's the life stage I'm in. It is what it is. I'm not complaining.
See, there you go. Embrace it. When you're in that stage of your life, embrace the minivan.
And the funny thing is, so we had that Pacifica, and then we also had the Toyota Sienna Platinum with the super lounge seats in the
Yeah.
middle row. And I've been talking to my wife a lot about the minivan stigma, and she's like, I never had it. We had one for a company car, one place she worked. She's like, I loved driving it. It was comfortable. And then again, that Sienna we had took her and one of her friends from college from Nacogdoches to Houston in the back. They were wanting champagne and movies. It was like the ultimate luxury. They had their feet propped up. They were wondering where their blankets were. The level of luxury that we were able to add is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, what's the one? I forget what is it called? The Pinnacle? Is that the Pacifica's?
Yes.
They have the one super fancy trim, the Pinnacle, and it's got like quilted seats and there's little pillows. Like there's little back pillows, which they have them in the second row. Like, look at these cute little seats. And I'm like, I'm not giving those to the kids. Give me that pillow. Like,
Right.
take it up and like that's my pillow. And they did one of their press kits, something they gave us, and they actually used the leather that was in the little Pinnacle pillows
Mhm.
to have. I still have it, and it's like I'm using it like as a random like holder for like all my charging stuff, like cables and charging blocks and stuff. But I'm like, look, there's a pillow in the seat for crying aloud. It's a minivan that has its own little pillow. That's cool. I
Yes.
love that.
A-
I want all cars to have that.
And to speak on just the demographic, so again, I do 2 videos for every vehicle that we do, and my solo, like quote unquote, gearhead review of that Sienna is one of my best performing videos on the entire channel. I'm like, y'all know I reviewed that with my wife and son, right? Go check that one out. But it's like exclusively 99% male viewership. I'm like, this is totally bucking every preconceived notion I had in my brain. What is going on here? But it's doing well, and I'm not going to argue with it.
I wonder, is it because the moms are trying to sell the dads? I don't know. Who would have the minivan stigma more? I'm going to it's probably stereotype and someone's going to hate me, but I'm betting maybe more the dads are like, I don't want to drive a minivan. And the moms are thinking, I have to drive the minivan because more moms are home with their kids typically than dads are, right? And the utility of being able to drive the minivan everywhere, they're sold. And they're like, look, what do I have to do to sell you on the fact that buying the Sienna is good? Watch these videos.
Yes.
Maybe that's why, I'm guessing. I don't know.
I honestly, again, they're all preconceived notions, but
Yes.
bucking every stereotype I had in my brain. And, that's good. In 2022 here, let's break down barriers, and
Exactly.
you enjoy what you enjoy. So yes,
Yes.
just completely blowing my mind on that one. Again, going back to, you have that approach, that mindset coming at vehicles how you would come at vehicles. You've been podcasting for years. You've been freelancing. What has been perhaps one of your most memorable vehicles to date?
Most memorable vehicles. I mean, there've been a lot. 10 years getting a car each week. That's a lot of cars. Um, there's some, what sticks in my head because it was just so fun. And it honestly wasn't the fact that it was stupidly priced. I had an Aston Martin DB11 that I had for a hot minute in my driveway. And you're not going to find an Aston Martin in my neighborhood. Like, this is not my neighborhood. This is not where I live. And it was so fun to see people's reaction, not in a way like, yeah, I'm driving this Aston Martin, I'm cool, but just to see people's enthusiasm for a car. Like, people are walking their dog, they're like, is that an Aston Martin? And I was showing neighbors that I knew, showing neighbors that I never met. I went in an ice cream run with my one neighbor next door to the local ice cream place, and she got to push the start button. You'd have thought I'd given her $1 million. She was so excited. So it wasn't like the show-offy part of saying you've driven one. It was sort of just the fun that brought to everyone, because I thought it was neat and that it shows, like, yeah, that's an expensive car. Most people don't ever see one. Fewer even drive one, right? It was a privilege to be able to drive that. But also just to see how excited people get about cars, and that people can have fun with them, that they can be fun and enjoyable and be a topic of conversation that sort of brings you together and chat about. And it just sort of the joy that can come from driving a car, whether it's that one that gets everybody talking or your cool new minivan, because parents will talk to you about minivans, So I think that one sticks out just because of the experience of seeing everybody else kind of want to experience that car, and seeing all their reactions from the random people at the grocery store and whoever to this vehicle and what everybody thought about it. That was fun, just for the experience of everybody else, not as much even the actual car.
Right. Well, it doesn't hurt that all Aston Martins are basically mobile art pieces. Like, they're absolutely gorgeous from every single angle.
They're so beautiful. I remember that for one of them that I was driving at an event once, and she was talking about there was like stitching on the ceiling. The ceiling was like this beautiful pattern, and it was like, you look up and it's just gorgeous, right? It's just the natural. It wasn't like some extra special custom thing. It's just how they stitched onto the ceiling. And she said, apparently you can tell whether, if you know what you're doing, you can tell whether you're a lefty or righty by the way the stitches go. And I thought, oh my gosh, the level of attention to detail, like you said, the artistry of that. You can tell whether a lefty or a righty stitched the ceiling of your several $100,000 car. That's both cool and absolutely ridiculous.
Yes. And just the level of passion and care and attention to detail, like you said, that goes into those cars. That is one reason why they are priced the way they are.
Yes, exactly.
So you touched on it a little bit earlier, the move, the push, the drive towards electrification. I'm stealing a little from my random misfire questions later in the episode, but how do you feel this transition is going from your perspective?
Well, I mean, it's going.
Yes.
It's happening.
Whether we like it or not, it's happening.
Right. And I think in some ways, I mean, it feels kind of fast in some ways, I think, to us that are inside the industry, because all of a sudden you're seeing lots of options when there were very, very few just a couple of years ago, right? But in terms of people adopting that, and I should say I'm not anti-EV. I like them. I think they're great to drive. We have a plug-in hybrid. So I'm someone who, I'm fine with it all. But I think for the general public, there's still a lot of nervousness about it. I think people aren't as comfortable with the notion, and it might depend on where you live. I'm on the East Coast. I'm sure this is less true in places like California, where there's a lot more EV and hybrid adoption, and it happened much sooner. But people are still really nervous about the idea that, well, what if I can't find someplace to plug in? What if I drive and then I'm stuck on a back road in the middle of nowhere and I can't drive anywhere and I have to walk and then I get attacked by a bear and die? Like, there's this sort of nervousness about going towards it, even with the increasing number of charging stations, even with the increased range, even with the increased charging speeds. So you don't have to sit around as long as you once did. There's still a lot of nervousness about it. And I was actually talking about this with some other colleagues this weekend. And we said one of the other things that happens is, so say you're the person in your neighborhood that goes and gets the EV, you do it. You're the one. You're the first guy. You've got an EV. Everyone's like, cool. Corey's got an EV. This is amazing. And they say, you take on a trip. How'd it go? And you're like, well, it went pretty good, except I went to this charging station and it was broken.
Yep.
And this charging station, the speed was not even close to what it was supposed to be. And when you see that people using it, they have the number of times they run into broken or malfunctioning or just very, very slow charging speeds, like it's nowhere near what should be coming out of that charging station, that further kind of pulls people away. So I think that it's that infrastructure thing. It's still very new. It's still trying to get figured out. And a lot of people aren't willing to take the risks, even though how often do you drive 250 miles in a day
Right.
and need to charge, right?
Right.
But people are still nervous about that. I think there's still a lot of nervousness. I think we'll get there. I think people will do it. I think eventually everything will get there. But I think it's just going to be a very slow crawl.
We've done a couple videos speaking specifically to that point. So the first EV we had for any length of time was the Mach-E. It was the all-wheel drive, the top of the line before the GT came out. And I took it from here in East Texas to Amarillo, which in a gas-powered vehicle, Google said 7 hours. As I did all my research through a Better Route Planner, through every single app I could get, the best number I got was 10. In reality, it was 14. So twice the amount of time. I nearly ran out of juice somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, past midnight.
See?
Had to talk myself out of a cash-only toll.
Oh my
Just sign of the
gosh.
times. I now know anytime I commit to something like this, bring at least a little bit of cash. And it was an interesting experience all the way around, learning all the different apps to use, learning all of the different charging types. I dove in head first. And since then, we recently had an EV6 from Kia. My wife, son, and I took that one to one of our favorite day trip vacation spots in the middle of nowhere, southeast Oklahoma, and just beautiful. It's Beavers Bend State Park. It's a gorgeous place to go. But in the back of my head, I've always considered this is someplace we love going. Could an EV get us there and back? And so just trying to see how they fit into our lifestyle while we have the luxury of, well, here's a car for a week, figure it out.
Right.
And then trying to relay that to everyone who's curious. And yeah, like you say, charging times are a problem. Reliability of charging stations on the Kia trip, the first one we pulled up to, dead, not even working. So
Right.
There's just so much that goes into it that I've recently seen in my YouTube feed. There's a channel I watch. He recently reviewed a 1990s internet, I don't want to say propaganda video, but a family how-to, explaining the internet to families. And I feel like that's where we are with EVs. The internet is something we completely take for granted now. You and I are talking to each other through the internet. Everything
Right.
I watch is through the internet. But there was a point within my lifetime where I was like, what's an email address?
Right?
What's a web address? Help here. So I feel like we're in that cringy.
That's a
how-to
great
video.
analogy. It is just like that because when everyone first started using the internet, there's a couple people who have an email address and they're all in, right? And everybody else is like, you're just weird. I don't know why you're using this email thing. It's never going to take off. Lo and behold. And I feel like it's a little bit the same way with electric vehicles that people think, fine, whatever. I'm just going to keep it in my car. I don't need this EV thing. This is weird. And that at some point, the same thing's going to happen, that people are going to find it very commonplace, that chargers are going to more often than not work, or there's going to be enough of them that it doesn't matter. Because if you go to a gas station now, right? There's 15 pumps, 2 of them don't work. You're like, big deal.
Yeah.
I go to one of the other ones, or I go to across the street to one of the other gas stations. Once EV charging can reach the same point where you're like, whatever, this one's broken, I'll just go to one of the other ones over there. And when those things stop being as nerve-wracking as they can be right now, then people are going to be fine with EVs. I don't know how long it's going to take. I think it's going to take a while. I think it's going to be a while. And the average age of a car, isn't it like 12 years or somewhere thereabouts, the average? So if you figure people are waiting 12 years, okay, if it's 12 years before you even get into them, we have a long time before a lot of people,
Yep.
it's going to take time for everyone to even consider making the switch.
Yep. So you said you've got a plug-in in the driveway. What vehicles are in your driveway? And I'm very curious about what the plug-in is.
I have just about a year ago, we got a Jeep Wrangler 4xe. So we got the plug-in Wrangler. Technically, it's the husband's car because we were replacing his and he really wanted a Wrangler. And then they came out with this and he thought it was great. I think if they'd had an EV Wrangler, I think he probably would have bought that because he's excited about the technology. He's an IT guy. So for him, it's kind of the tech thing. Yeah. It's like, I want the new thing. What's the newness? I want the newness. And the newness is moving towards electric. So it also combined the new with his desire to go drive places that he probably shouldn't be driving because so he's I can go anywhere and it's got electric. Right. So so we have the 4xe and we love it. It's great. We've gotten very used to just plugging it in, and the places will sometimes plug it in around town, and he knows how far he can get, and he's gotten used to, because we're in New Hampshire, when it's cold, it's cold. So during the winter months, he does notice that, declining all EV range or all electric range goes down. So he's used to it, but he sort of gamifies it because you can see, how much gas you've used versus how much electric you've used. And he wants to keep the electric as high as possible, so he has fun with that, but we love it. Our biggest challenge was just getting, we had a level 2 charger installed, and with all the supply stuff, we couldn't even get one. First we couldn't get the one that we wanted. The one that he wanted was going to take like 4 months to arrive. And we thought, well, that's no good. And then it was whether we got one hardwired into the house or one that you can just plug into an outlet. So you could technically take it with you. The ones you plug into an outlet, we couldn't get for even longer. So it had to be hardwired. And then the wire for that one cost more. So it's like this. So you're talking about the hassle. I'm sure at some point that will not be a hassle at all. It'll be getting a level 2 charger in your house, will be whatever. Right. But it was a process,
Or they'll just start building houses and that'll be a de facto, where do you want the
standard
charger?
Thing. Yeah, like it'll be a regular thing. Like you have, plugs for your washing machine and your dryer needs I guess it's your dryer that needs the heavier duty plug, right? So most houses have one of those. Most houses maybe someday will be all set to go with level 2 charger.
That's exactly how we charge EVs here. We're sponsored by Electron EV Chargers, and they sent us one that plugs into, like, my parking spot in the garage looks at the dryer plug. So I just move my car out, move the electric vehicle in, plug it up and go. And again, it's all part of that EV adoption curve and knowing what is possible. He needs to, if he isn't already, get involved with the Jeep 4xe fans on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They're everywhere. I've had the leader, Chris Hall, on a couple times on this podcast. He was actually the first person in the world, I believe, as a consumer, to own a 4xe Wrangler, and was featured in Stellantis's Battery Day hoopla. And I've joined the group. It's a very fun conversation. That platform absolutely is on my wish list. We even compared one against a 392 Wrangler.
Did you?
I had
the opposites in terms of efficiency.
Yes. And one wouldn't exist without another, because I am sure Stellantis was using their energy credits for making the 4xe to even justify bringing the 392 to market. But I had Scott Talon, the head of Jeep marketing, riding shotgun with me. My co-host at the time was behind us with the head from the SRT team riding in the 392. It was quite an interesting sight. We were in the pink 4xe. What's Tuscadero?
Tuscadero,
gotta get the name right. And they were in the hydro blue 392. Yeah. So we were a sight to behold for sure.
I had a press, that pink one I got as a press car, and then my husband's is firecracker red. Okay. So the two of them sat in the driveway, like wow, we're like attracting all the attention. And then we went on our favorite little like local off-road trail, It was super fun, and I saw some other folks like, "Oh, you got 2 of them." Like, only one is actually ours. The
Yes.
other one's kinda there still, but it was fun, this bright red and this bright pink. It was really fun.
So y'all aren't afraid of colors, I assume.
No.
We recently gave back the Genesis GV60 electric vehicle, and I'm so grateful. You can tell by the shirt I'm wearing right now, the listeners can't see, but it was in that Sao Paulo lime color, and I was all about it. It turned heads everywhere we went, not only because of the bright color, but because it's such a unique design in and of itself. But yeah, talking about turning heads, I think
Yeah,
that
some of those colors are crazy. It most of the time, it's funny when you get I think the only color that I sometimes don't like are some of the oranges, like really orange, not even like bronze or burnished, whatever, but the straight up orange sometimes, like, oh, I feel like I'm literally driving an orange. Can't do it.
and there are only a handful out there. I think Dodge has got a couple orange, Chevy on the Corvette. So yeah, there's some out there, but
There are some orange ones out there, yeah.
well, Nicole, I want to be respectful of your time, so we will pivot into our final segment called Random Misfire. I feel I've got kind of a good feel for what questions would be best for you in our conversations here. I've got a long list, but I will pick the 8 best because all engines in this crazy old school guy's head should have 8 cylinders. So if you are ready, we will dive in.
Okay, I'm ready.
First one I ask of everyone, it is like my go-to question. Do you name your vehicles?
No, I never have.
And you'll even have a Jeep Wrangler. Like that's a thing.
Well, I take that back. No, I did. I named when I was in high school, I had a really beat up silver Buick Century. We called it the Silver Bullet because it was not fast in any way. But I think that was the only car that I officially named.
All right. No hate here. Just trying to get your mindset there. All right. So we're talking Wrangler. Y'all have a Wrangler. I assume, given being on the World Car of the Year and all the different avenues in which you receive vehicles, are you team Wrangler or are you team Bronco?
I'm team Wrangler.
Okay.
I'm team Wrangler, not even because I have one. I just like the Wrangler better. I'm team Wrangler. Sorry, Ford. I love your Bronco, but I'm team Wrangler.
and again, this one's a very tough one for journalists to answer because we never really want to reveal our biases. And I'm guilty. But when I am blatant about what my biases are, like I love the Genesis brand. I have yet to get in something from Genesis that I'm like, no, wouldn't have it. Like, yes, if it's got that badge on it, bring it to me. I'll test it. I'll love it.
Right.
Whatever the case may be. We are somewhat of a house divided here between my wife and I because we had a Bronco for a week. She loved it. She was like, when are we buying one?
Mm-hmm.
I tested a Rubicon Wrangler shortly thereafter. And as much as I like the Bronco, it's very comfortable on road. Almost going after a different customer because the hardcore people are always going to go Wrangler just because of the hardware. It is what it is. And everything just felt right in the Wrangler.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, so the Bronco and the Wrangler are both super off-road capable. I mean, you're not really going to go wrong in one of these, but in some point with every car purchase, every journalist, it just comes down to, I like this one better. It's not always like, well, because the gear ratio is this or because no, I just like this one better. For me, this one's better. For you, maybe not, but me personally, Wrangler girl. But I actually think the Bronco is great. But yeah, if I have to pick a team, sorry, that's my team.
And I would absolutely, I'm fully, as I've alluded, I'm team Wrangler over here, but I would gladly, happily talk someone into a Bronco if I sat down with them. I said, what are your wants? What are your needs?
Yes.
What are your preferences? What do you love? What do you hate? And while I have personal biases, I would absolutely put those aside, listening to, okay, this is what you need. And to how I review vehicles, that's how I do it. Yes, I bring biases to everything I do. We all do, but I want to present a broad scale opinion. So
Yes.
I feel like knowing you, especially knowing
Uh-oh.
what you've said about your husband, I know the answer to this one, but are you in favor of more tech or less tech in vehicles?
Oh, I'm a more tech person. I mean, and I guess I did give it away because the husband's an IT guy, but more tech, but only if it works. So
Yes.
help me. If anybody gives me one more voice activated infotainment system where I say, can you take me to the nearest McDonald's? And they're like, directions to the airport. I'm gonna scream. I just want it to do what I'm asking it to do. If your tech doesn't work, just keep it another generation. Make it work, make it easy. Don't make me stabby behind the steering wheel because I can't get it to work.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Just make it work. I read an article last night from Car and Driver, Ezra over at Car and Driver. He was
Mhm.
ranting about the gear selector, drive modes, whatever you want to call what automakers are doing now. You've got a dial, you've got a handle, you've got a
Yes.
buttons, and he was in his tirade about that. On his hit list were, yes, exactly, voice activated things that don't work,
It's
and
worst.
like, stop. Uh, so,
Yes.
side note, do you have a brand that does tech particularly well?
Um, you know what? I used to hate what I didn't like the Toyota Lexus one. I found them finicky, and their newest one
Mhm.
where you can do the "Hey Toyota," you can talk to it. It's so much better. It's
Mhm.
really good, and I love that when it answers you. If you ask the question from the driver's seat, it talks to you from the driver's seat. If you ask the question from the
Nice.
passenger seat, it answers you at the passenger seat. I felt like it was good. Like the number of times I just said what I was thinking, and it wasn't necessarily a perfectly phrased trying to talk to a computer
Mhm.
request, it still figured it out. So, and I know that they've just recently
Mhm.
upgraded all of that, and I think it's vastly better. So I'm going to give them props because I really like theirs.
And that was all in house. Like they
Hmm.
built a team to say, okay, we need this. This is the future. So it is great to see an investment like that pay off.
Yeah.
I've had limited time with that system. The Sienna we had didn't have it, but they're slowly rolling their in-house built system out to more vehicles. It's in the Tundra, it's in the
Mhm.
Sequoia, it's in the Lexus NX, soon to be in. It was in the LX that I sampled, so I will take that back. We did have it for a week in that LX, so slowly getting out there to people. But yes,
Yeah.
very good system. I feel like I also know the answer to this one, but I will
Uh-oh.
ask it anyway. New cars or classic cars?
I like new cars.
Yep.
I mean, I appreciate classic cars, like really truly classic cars for the style of them and what
Mhm.
they were. But I like the new because I like to see where things are going, not where things have been.
Going through the list here. One more, this or that. I'm sure you've sampled both. Ram TRX or Ford Raptor. Now, Ford just revealed the Raptor R to really compete, but
So is it just the TRX Raptor or TRX Raptor R? Which one am I comparing to? I haven't driven the Raptor R, but it looks okay. I'm going to say Raptor R,
okay.
even though I haven't driven it, based on what it is on paper.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Based on what if it drives like I think it will drive, and based on what it is on paper, I think the Raptor R is going to be crazy in all the best ways possible. So I'm going to go with Raptor R.
I was in a conversation with someone just yesterday about the heyday of 60s muscle car wars, and he's a Ford guy, I'm a Chevy guy. Like, he was even unaware that Chevy had a 302 in the Camaro Z28, and we're just talking about how great that was. Who would have figured in 2022 that that same essential war would be going on, but with pickup trucks? Like,
Yeah. It's completely unexpected, and it's just, and I know it's impractical and it's silly, and who really needs a truck with all of that, and who can really is really going to use a truck's capability with all that? I don't know, but for the 3 guys that are and the other 1,000 that buy it, you have fun with that.
you enjoy. So we'll go into a little more fun questions here. Let's see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far. So 3 more. Favorite road trip snack? What's your go-to on a long trip?
Oh, the first thing that popped in my head, beef jerky.
Okay.
I always stop and get beef jerky, and they always have it at roadside stands, and it's some kind of crazy, Billy Bob's best beef jerky in Louisiana or whatever it is. Or there's alien beef jerky on the trip out when you're in like Vegas out that way. Yeah, I stopped. Yeah, I bought a bunch, and the place looked like a giant flying saucer. So,
Nice.
beef jerky would be my thing, my road trip snack of choice.
It's amazing how often beef jerky and combos come up. Those are like the
Combos are a good
staples.
one too. That's a good one. I approve of that one too.
Okay. Okay. And what would be your perfect road trip playlist, whether it be a genre or an artist or
Okay, my perfect road trip playlist has to be, I don't think it's a genre. I think it's, well, 95% of it has to be something that everybody in the car can sing. Off key, terribly, but you all have, and even if it doesn't matter whether it's mom and dad's generation or the teenagers' generation or like grandpa's stuff from the 50s, doesn't matter. If most of you can sing to it or hum it, then it's a good road trip song.
that is a very appropriate answer. I
Yeah.
agree. I grew up listening to the oldies station, air quotes, which I believe
Yeah.
at the time was like 50s, 60s music. Now,
Mhm.
sadly for me, it's like 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So
Right.
we don't talk about that term so much anymore. But yes, I'm a fan of almost anything. And so, yes, if you can get everyone involved in the fun, I'm
Yeah.
on board for
And
it.
it's even better if there's somehow goofy hand motions that you can do to go along with it, like do some dancing in the car at the same time.
So, bonus question: do you dance in the car?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, I have to catch myself sometimes if I'm in too much of stop and go traffic. If I'm not going to see the car next to me again in any sort of relative near future, I'll just go with abandon. But if we're going to be stuck next to each other for 2 hours, I'm probably going to be a little more restrained.
See, I'm the one who doesn't care. I'm the one who's totally grooving. I'll have the windows down if it's a good. I'm singing. I'll be like, like, hey neighbor, who's going to be rolling along next to me at 10 miles an hour in this traffic jam? Get used to it because this is what you got for the next 10 miles.
More power to you on that one. All right, we will wrap it up with this one. I know I threw a few bonus ones in there, but
That's okay.
what do you feel, and this kind of goes back to your Aston Martin question earlier, is
Okay.
the most exciting, most interesting vehicle on the market today?
Most exciting, most interesting vehicle on the market today. Oh, that's hard.
I do
Gosh,
apologize.
because it depends on, like, I'm one of those people who's like, well, give me some parameters. What category? I don't know. I'm really liking in terms of EVs, I'm going to pick out two, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. And it's because I feel like they are stylish. They're EVs. They feel accessible to people. And it's not like because some of the brands that are EV only brands, people are like, I'm not going to buy a Rivian. I don't know who the heck that is. I'm not going to buy a Fisker. I don't know who the heck that is. But it's like Hyundai, Kia, they're pretty mainstream brands, right? You aren't afraid of those. And for them to come up with these affordable in the grand scheme of EVs that look cool and a little forward thinking without being so out there, you feel like you're driving something weird. I think both of those are going to go a long way for getting people to consider electric vehicles. So I'm going to put them up there as some of my top vehicles that are out there right now.
I agree wholeheartedly, as do all of our peers in the industry. The Ioniq 5 won World Car of the Year, not even just EV,
did.
World Car of the Year. So
Yeah.
high praise from you, your team, your colleagues. Yes, very, very interesting. Well, Nicole, I thank you so much for spending the day with me, talking cars, talking your history. If you've got some time for our Patreon members, I've got two more fun questions for you behind the paywall. And
Absolutely. Yes. I'm game.
all right. Well, for those not currently initiated, you can go to patreon.com/GT Garage Talk, and at I believe it's $5 a month tier, you can unlock all past episodes of our bonus round. It's called the Aftermarket, where we have fun conversations and it is the same two questions, but very different answers every time. But Nicole, where could people find you and your work specifically? Do you have like one hub that people can go to?
If you look, I actually have a website. It's just NicoleWakeland.com, and it has links to everything. You can also find me, same thing, Nicole Wakeland. If you look for me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter all the time, on Instagram all the time. But if you just go to NicoleWakeland.com, you can find links to the podcasts and the everything else that I cover. So
I will put links down in the show notes, make it very simple and easy for you. But Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is fun.
And there you have it. I am so incredibly thankful for Nicole taking the time to speak with me. She's got another podcast she's recording later today. She is very busy indeed. She's been podcasting for a very long time, and I appreciate her joining me on season 3 of the GT Garage Talk podcast. If you want to support us and what we do, you can absolutely go check us out on Patreon and get involved there. You will gain access to every interview that I've uploaded so far. I do think I'm just a little behind on getting some of those up, so onus is on me to upload all of those fun interviews on the back end. You can also go check us out, Facebook, Instagram, definitely on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is really what drives us. You can even check us out, GT Garage Talk /gear, see some of the stuff we recommend. But until next time, gearheads, bye.